the only zero build video you will ever need. I'll be covering the basic information that you need to know, show you how to win more games, and give you tips to get you better at zero build. Since its release in March of 2022, Fortnite Zero Build has grown into its own game. Fortnite Zero Build is exactly how it sounds. It's a simpler version of Fortnite, just without the building. It is extremely beginner friendly, and I would recommend any player who is just starting to play Fortnite to play Zero Build first. This is for the players who want a more relaxed experience, or prefer the game without having to build. It has the same weapons, the same movement, and the same map. There are only two main differences from the main Battle Royale. One is obvious, it's that building is turned off. The second is that players have a rechargeable overshield on top of their regular shield. Now that we've covered the basics, let's talk about winning more games and how to improve in Zero Build. These are the most important things when it comes to Zero Build. The key to winning in Zero Build is to play around cover. Because you can't build to protect yourself, you need to always focus on where the best cover is. This includes things like buildings, hills, trees, or even throwable cover like bunkers. As you move throughout the game, you should always be thinking about how you're going to move from one spot to the next. And that brings us to the next key to success: movement. Fortnite has added a ton of movement mechanics: sliding, sprinting, mantling, hurdling, and even climbing walls. And you have to understand how to use this movement. The easiest examples of this are sprinting to get behind cover or mantling up into a building for better position. You need to understand how to combine these mechanics for optimal movement. For example, you can jump higher and further while sprinting. Another example is sprinting, sliding, and then back to sprinting. Repeating this simple mechanical trick will keep you moving just as fast, make you harder to hit, and reduce the amount of stamina used. If you're just starting to play Fortnite, the best thing you can do is master your movement. That goes for both Zero Build and builds. The last key for Zero Builds is to know the best loadouts. This will change over time, but the core principles remain the same. You have 5 loadout spots, and at least 2 of them should be weapons. First, you're gonna want a shotgun. Typically, the higher fire rate shotguns are better in Zero Build. Certain shotguns like the pump lose value in this mode because you don't have builds to protect you while you wait out the delay to shoot your second shot. So be sure to look for shotguns like the Gatekeeper, Sovereign Shotgun, Tactical Shotty, or Auto Shotty. The second weapon is your spray weapon, and generally this will be an AR. You're gonna want to run an AR over an SMG due to increased damage and accuracy at medium to far ranges. And the exact AR you choose is up to you. You're gonna want something that's accurate and can also hold up as a spray weapon to follow up on your shotgun shots. That leaves you with 3 more slots left. One of those 3 slots will be protection or cover. Examples of that would be bunkers or shield bubbles. Another slot is going to be for movement. These are your shockwaves, rifts, grapplers, Iron Man boots, or pretty much whatever movement items are in the game. And then the final slot is for healing. The faster healing, the better. Splashes are the best healing item for Zero Builds. That's because you can use them while moving and they heal for both shield and health. Flowberry Fizz is another great heal because of its movement and healing abilities. So that's your loadout. Here are some tips that are going to help you win more games. Tip number 1, use overshield to your advantage. The overshield is located next to the health and shield bars and has a maximum value of 50. You shouldn't worry about the shield being damaged, since it will recharge shortly after you take damage. When this is fully charged, you can be more aggressive. And the reverse is also true. When your shield is damaged, you should play slowly to allow it to recharge and maximize your available HP. Tip number 2 is that your landing spot affects the rest of your game. Depending on where you land on the map is going to determine how you should play your early and mid game. If you land in the center of the map, your early and mid game will be focusing on securing loot, fighting other players, and establishing a strong position. For people that like to land on the outskirts, you're going to also have to loot up, but your game will require much more focus on your rotates. Players will start settling up all over the map, so you need to make sure you're choosing a safe path to get to zone. Sometimes this is going to require you to tank some storm damage in order to avoid players. And don't worry, tanking storm is perfectly fine, and honestly the best way to get safe rotations. In order to figure out the best rotations and ways to play your drop spot, you just need to play games. Play a few games from a certain drop spot and figure out what the strengths and weaknesses are. You need to be able to answer these questions. Where are the places I am regularly running into players? What are my rotate options? Where do I want to end up? All of this is important and something that can only be learned by playing. Tip number 3. Just because something in Battle Royale works doesn't mean it's going to work in Zero Build. So what do I mean by that? The easiest example I can give you is that I typically take a pump over a Sovereign Shotgun in build modes, but in Zero Builds, you'd prefer the Sovereign Shotgun because of the fire rate and clip size. There's a lot of little things like this where you'd want to do it in builds, but not in Zero Builds. And before we get to the next tip, if you're enjoying this video, please be sure to drop a like. And if you aren't already subscribed, well, hate to break it to you, but you're missing out on some major improvement. Tip number 4, always use natural cover when trying to rotate. Fortnite has a ton of hills and buildings that you can use for cover while you're rotating. Your goal should be to cut out the line of sight from as many players as possible when you need to move. If you can rotate under a hill or through a building, that's the best plan. Your rotations are your most vulnerable moments, so do your best to protect yourself. Tip number 5. This is targeted directly to my fellow build players. Stop trying to build when you get shot at or damaged. Your immediate reflexes will be to place builds, and that's going to lose you precious time in a fight. So take some time when switching between the modes to warm up and get used to the lack of building. Tip number 6. Right hand peeks win. Fortnite is a third-person shooter with a right side dominant camera. When shooting from your right side, it'll expose less of your character than when shooting from the left. Not only should you be looking for cover, but your cover should allow you to shoot from your right side. This will help you win more fights, and you should always be looking for the right hand peek or angle when fighting opponents. There should be a constant effort to seek out these angles during fights and when taking peeks. Tip number 7. This is a very simple one, but also extremely important. Before we get to that, I would like to proudly announce that I am officially a part of Medify. As you've seen before, I coach people all the time. Oftentimes, it's for free in my thesis Discord or during my Tuesday thesis, but there are many times where I do paid private sessions. Medify makes this entire process easier for both of us. So if you're interested in taking your game to the next level, come book a session at medify.gg/@cease and let me help you get your first or next earnings. Now, let's hop right back into the video. Tip number 7. Always reload your weapons after every fight. We've all been there, where you finish a fight and you don't switch to your AR until the next fight. Then you never realize that you didn't reload it. And typically you realize that too late. So take a second while rotating or after healing to check your weapons. Tip number 8. Always seek to hold the high ground. High ground is king. Whether it's off spawn or at the end of the game, the player in the highest position is going to have the most advantage. Having high ground will give you better angles to shoot at, more options to escape, and a better perspective on the fight. Tip number 9. You gotta play around cover. Like we talked about earlier, cover is extremely important. When playing zero builds, you should always be using some kind of cover and thinking about what you can use next. You never want to get caught out in the open, so make sure you're moving from cover to cover. And if you can't get to the next piece of cover, then you need to be ready to use your own movement item or throw down a cover of your own. Tip number 10. Always think through the worst case scenario. If you're rotating and a player starts to shoot you from above, what is your first move going to be? Are you going to throw down a bunker, use your movement, or just shoot back? Not every situation will be the same, so think about what you have in your inventory and what your first move will be if a player attacks you. Tip number 11. Always be looking for those power positions towards the end of the game. You're gonna want the strongest positions possible. This includes things like the top of the buildings or mountains. A good power position will give you high ground, some sort of protection, and the ability to cut off angles from opponents. A bad position will leave you exposed from multiple angles, having no rotation options, and typically get you killed. Taking these positions early will allow you to win more games. And last but not least, tip number 12. Let's talk about playing zero build with a team. We talked about loadouts earlier, but that can change if you're playing in team modes. You have more slots, so you have greater flexibility in your loadout. You want to work with your teammates to build the best loadouts possible. For example, one player can hold shield bubbles and the other can hold bunkers. That's your basics to zero build Fortnite and some tips to help you win more games. If you want me to make another video about zero builds, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.